Time now for our weekly segment, Race in America, hosted by Ashlee Banks. Ashlee, it's all you.
Hi there, Anya. So right now on Race in America, I'll be discussing the recent police shooting death of unarmed teen Antwon Rose, sparking protests all over Pittsburgh. On Tuesday night, a Pittsburgh police officer shot the 17-year-old 3 times in his back as he was fleeing a vehicle during a traffic stop. The Allegheny County Police Department posted a description of what happened on Facebook saying, quote, "An East Pittsburgh police officer saw a vehicle matching the description on Grandview Avenue, which also had ballistics damage to the rear window. The officer stopped the vehicle while he was putting the driver into handcuffs. 2 other occupants ran from the car. One individual, a 17-year-old male, was shot by police. He was declared deceased." Police were responding to an earlier incident where shots were fired from a car, striking a 22-year-old man, leaving him with non-life-threatening injuries. It's unclear whether Rose or those in the car with him were involved in the shooting. At this time, an investigation is underway, and the department has placed the officer who shot and killed Rose on leave. Joining me now to continue this conversation is former D.C. Metro Police Officer Ronald Hampton. Thank you so much for joining me today, Ronald.
Thank you.
Now, at this moment, so many details are still unclear, but what we do know is Rose was unarmed and was fatally shot in the back while fleeing the scene. Rose obviously posed no threat to the officer, so why shoot him?
Well, that's what I think that's what they're protesting about, and it raises some serious questions with myself because there's a Supreme Court ruling, Tennessee versus Gardner. This is happened as a result of a burglary that had taken place in the neighborhood. A young man runs out of the house, attempts to jump over a fence, and the officer shoots him in the back. So it raises, the whole question raises, when do you use deadly force, and especially when an individual is running from you. And if the individual does not represent a danger to you or someone else, then you don't have any justification in terms of shooting. So there's some real serious questions about this particular officer's behavior, along with the fact that he was a brand new, and I mean brand new, police officer. So he might not even should have been in the car on the scene of that type of an incident with just having been sworn in as a police officer.
All right, like you said, he was sworn in just hours before the incident took place.
Absolutely.
After Rose was pronounced dead, the officer was placed on leave, but what's next? Do you foresee him facing charges for killing Rose?
Well, I would think that number one, there would have to be some serious investigation. So the protesters are right to be raising the question about what's going to happen there. And there has to be a serious investigation, and one that's going to yield some results. This isn't new for Pittsburgh. We have had issues in Pittsburgh for years, and as a matter of fact, Pittsburgh now has a very strong civilian complaint review board as a result of past practices in police misconduct and brutality as it relates to African-American men. Years ago, there was a young man by the name of Johnny Gamridge that was shot and killed by police officers that sort of sparked this whole incident and this whole series of events that we've had now. So there's a long history of police shootings and very little being done about it. So right now, the police department in the city of Pittsburgh is on edge, and rightfully so, because accountability hasn't somehow never been a part of the conversation there.
Ronald, when it comes to an investigation like this one, how long would you suspect that would take?
Well, I would say anything more than 6 months is going to be problematic because people are going to want speedy justice. They're going to want some information right now. And so if they have, for example, if they have a camera, if the officer had a camera, if they had a camera on a car, if there were CBT systems on the street, then they need to start to look over that material and then begin to talk about when they're going to release it, and then talk about turning all of that information over to a grand jury, to a prosecutor, and let them begin to deliberate on whether or not the police officer is going to be charged. But the right thing to do now is for people to protest. I mean, they have to put the pressure on the police department, and also the right thing to do is to allow them to do a comprehensive investigation of what it is that has happened, and then begin to talk about what's going to be the responsibility and who's at blame for the shooting.
And we can only hope that's going to happen. I want to mention at this time the officer's name has not yet been released to the public. So in your opinion, you've worked for police departments. Why do you think the department is withholding that information?
Well, probably because of some rules related to protecting the police officer and his family as a result of the shooting, and because of the controversial nature of the shooting. But sooner or later, they're going to have to release the name because he's a public figure. He has some responsibility and accountability to the public for his actions, along with the police department. So that's going to be forthcoming. There's no way that they can refuse to release the name of the officer as well as other information regarding the shooting. They're going to have to come clean with all of that information. It makes the difference, and transparency is important along with accountability.
Now, do you believe with the fact that there are a lot of protests right now taking place in Pittsburgh over Antwon's death, if they were to release this officer's name, do you think that his life would be in jeopardy?
Oh, no, I don't believe so, because more violence isn't going to bring about the truth. Transparency, accountability, having some information about what happened and then releasing that information to the public is really what's needed. It's all about the process. I don't believe that it's going to create a situation where this officer and his family is going to be under any threat. As a police officer, I lived in the city all my life, born and raised here. I didn't have any of those issues. And I think what the difference is that then you begin to have friends and neighbors and people know who you are, and that makes all the difference in the world. And that's a plus for any police department to have their officers live in the city, because you begin to know who the police officers are as well as where they live.
And that makes sense. We're going to have to leave it right there. Thank you so much, Ronald. That was former D.C. Metro Police Officer Ronald Hampton. That's it for Race in America. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at AshleeBanks_RT. Back to you.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.